morning and welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz LoveTalk. I'm delighted because I got guests this morning. Hello, Joanna Steinberg from the New Haven Museum, right?
Yep.
And Paula Mann-Agnew from the Executive Director of Discovering Amistad, right?
Good morning. Yes, good
How are
morning.
you all?
Great.
Nice to see y'all.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so this is Amistad Weekend. Are we calling it
Mhm.
Amistad Weekend? I like Amistad Weekend.
We can.
Fewer words is always better.
I love it. All right, so what makes this weekend uniquely Amistad Weekend? What is happening?
So I'll start. We're just so excited about this weekend because we have an opportunity discovering Amistad, the Gilder Lehrman Center and the New Haven Museum. We formed a collaboration where we have an opportunity to showcase the legacy of the Amistad in New Haven. And so we're really excited about it. We have several events that are planned both Friday and Saturday that we'll talk to you more about. And I think, for me, one of the most important aspects, and I think that the museum definitely has captured this, this is about the Amistad retold, right? And so we think about history and we understand that sometimes history is distorted or whitewashed or not inclusive, right? And so this gives us a weekend to focus on the story in a way where all voices are elevated. So we're really excited to be able to do this.
I love
Joanna?
it.
Yeah, I think what's exciting for us too is all these new partnerships, really working closely with Paula and her whole team at Discovering Amistad. Daisha Brabham, who couldn't be here today, but is really one of the key visionaries behind this whole weekend of programming, the education director at the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition. We had this idea of doing a whole weekend in the summer while Discovering Amistad is docked in New Haven, where we want to take the engagement outdoors. We want to try something different. And we have this whole idea of this multimedia experience that draws on film and music, the new exhibition that we have at the New Haven Museum that Paula mentioned, and just waterfront programs as well. So in terms of the schedule, we're kind of kicking off on Friday with the reconstructed boat being docked at New Haven. So Paula, am I right? In between 3 and 7,
Yes.
anyone can come onto the boat, experience it.
Yes.
I haven't been on that. I haven't been on the schooner in a very long time. So
okay, it's time for you to come back. And I think it's, one of the things that's important to us is that it's always free. We always have free opportunities for community members to come. The ship it's Connecticut's flagship, and New Haven is our home. And so we're really looking forward to that.
Okay, so you start Friday night. You're going to show the film, the Steven Spielberg 1997 film.
Yep.
And
with the introduction, really kind of historicizing the film, looking at how it changed conceptions of the Amistad story. What are the misconceptions? What have we learned since then, drawn from new scholarship? And then we're going to watch the film. And we hope to have subsequent programs kind of discussing what's new in our understanding of the Amistad story. Saturday, we're encouraging everyone to come to the New Haven Museum first, 10 a.m. We're going to kick off events with a performance by Nia Arts and Karan Walker, who are leading a libation ceremony, a call to the ancestors with live West African drumming and dances. And also the vocalist, Karan Walker, is going to kind of kick off the opening here. We'll be leading free tours throughout the day at the new Amistad Retold exhibition. As Paula mentioned, it's completely new. We're really drawing on new scholarship, more recent representations in the arts of the Amistad in the last 20 years. We're also, it was a community effort where we worked with great project advisors, community partners, scrutinized the text, reinterpreted and reframed it. So we're encouraging people to come through the New Haven Museum and then go over back to Long Wharf, 12 o'clock. Paula, do you want to talk about the performances at 12?
Sure. We're going to have, we will have performances by Mike Mills, who will be on the ship and will engage all of the visitors in West African and the Caribbean a musical experience. Everyone will be able to participate. Everyone gets an instrument when they come on the ship. And then we'll have our docents on the ship, and they will be able to give the tour around the ship so that the visitors will have an opportunity to see what happened in 1839, kind of how the whole thing unfolded. And I think what's most important for us as we're telling the story on the ship is that there's an opportunity for us to think about the lessons of the story, not just the historical content, but the lessons. What does it mean to us today? You know, what are the similarities in what happened in 1839 and where we are today? What does this mean for us personally? How does our lived experience connect to the story? So the tour itself is it's historical, but at the same time, it really is. It's about us being change agents to think about how we can be a part of changing history the way Singbe Pie did in 1839. Who was a young man of colors, a young guy. And he changed the course of history so much so that almost 200 years later, we're still talking about what took place that day.
And the Amistad wasn't called the Amistad in those days, and it was a slave ship.
It's interesting. It was not a slave ship. It was not a slave ship. And I'm glad you brought that up because many people, when they get on the ship, that's one of the first things they say, I want to go below and I want to see below. And the reality is that the Amistad, it was La Amistad, you're right. And it was not a slave ship. It was a cargo ship. And it was carrying, produce and sugarcane and things like that. But the 53 Mende were kidnapped and put on this cargo ship. And with the plan to enslave them, but that never happened. They were, they fought for their freedom on the ship. They fought for their lives on the ship, and then fought for their freedoms in the ports. If you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in the courts here in New Haven, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do we know, Paula, now that we didn't know when we first got this story? Because I remember the pride that we felt. Well, I mean, because there's the statue.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
sits in City Hall. I
Yes.
remember that day.
Yeah.
When that statue was put there. I remember the conversations leading up to the statue. I mean, I'm old now, but I remember that. And I remember when the rebuilding the replica of the ship was built
in 2000.
Yes, I remember that very vividly. And when it came into port and the celebrations around that, and how it sailed to West Africa a couple of times, right, to connect to those folks. And so what do we know now, Paula, that we didn't know then?
I think what we know is that we have to continue to fight for freedom. So we look at the times we're in right now, with all of the political ups and downs we're going through right now. And we find ourselves in a situation where the lessons from the Amistad story, if we could focus on them now, we will be much better off, right? So you think about the leadership that came out of the story. You think about the young men who they were trained as leaders in their communities. And that's why they were able to overturn the ship. And so we think about how we have to continue to invest in young people in our communities, right? We think about the abolitionists who came from all different walks of life. And we think about how they came together for this common cause. We have to continue to be able to do that. And so I think I don't think it's as much as new information as much as it is how we're internalizing that information and using that as kind of a blueprint for our lives today.
Mm-hmm. So
can I add to it too?
Yes, please.
Yeah, because our exhibit was first created 1990 and last adapted in 1997. So we were in real need of the update based on new scholarship. We're kind of working on hopefully bringing historian Marcus Rediker to New Haven. More updates on that soon. But his scholarship really explores the origins, where they were from. They were a multi-ethnic, multilingual group. Majority Mende, others included Temne, Kono, Gola, Loma. As a group, they spoke nearly 15 different languages. And through his research, he also looked at their story of repatriation, like what happens after the Supreme Court ruling when they do, the surviving Amistad rebels do return to Sierra Leone. What happens then? That 2/3 leave the missionary group, a third stays behind. The children of the Amistad, who we know much more about due to new scholarship, we're hoping to really foreground their stories in the new exhibition. So students, when we're teaching it here at New Haven Museum, students have asked, did the Amistad revolt lead to other revolts? And I realized how much I needed to step back and doing more research to reframe that as one of many revolts that were happening in West Africa and across the Atlantic. And so that's something that our exhibit does much better now. It has much more in the global context. Students are, for the most part, it's new information when they learn that Haiti was the first country to abolish the slave trade and slavery after a 14-year revolution led by enslaved people. So we really want to tell those stories about the Amistad revolt being one of many, but why it became such an important story here in New Haven. You mentioned that their freedom, it was recognized in the courts here in New Haven until the case was appealed while President Van Buren was up for re-election, and it moved up to the Supreme Court after that.
So Joanna, for the New Haven Museum, because New Haven is in your name, so that means you immerse yourself in all things historical of New Haven. I mean, this has got to be an amazing sort of exhibition that you get to come back to over a period of time and still get some fresh, new ideas of telling this story and bringing it to new audiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone knows the iconic 1840 painting of Sangbe Pia that we have here, but there's a whole new section that shows more recent representations of the Amistad story. I always love Hale Woodruff's mural studies from 1939. He's a Black painter and muralist commissioned by Talladega College, a historically Black college in the South, to commemorate the Amistad story. He worked with Diego Rivera. He just has an incredible story. But we have a new acquisition that's a serograph of Jacob Lawrence's 1989 painting, Revolt on the Amistad. Tom Thurston, and we had the best project advisors, Daisha included, but Tom also gave us a photograph of a mural that's in Freetown, Sierra Leone today that mirrors aspects of the 1840 portrait. But you actually see the actual terrain of Sierra Leone and the dress that he's the garments that he's wearing look completely different.
So talk to me about how all the players come together to collaborate. Because this is an international story, right? Yeah. Like this, when the film came out in '97, I don't think people have seen a slave story quite so, or enslavement story of people quite like this before, that really talks about revolutionary kinds of things and how hard these folks fought and who was fighting on their behalf. Talk a little bit about all the collaborative folks involved in this undertaking.
Well, it's so exciting for us to work with Discovering Amistad. This is like a great first step for us, and we're thrilled to be working with Paula and Chris Menapace and the whole team over there. Daisha, who's traveling, but you'll see her involved on Friday night. She was a tremendous resource at the Gilder Lehrman Center, helped update the text as well. We worked with Dexter Gabriel, who's a professor of history and Africana studies at UConn. We had Kai Perry, who I know works closely with Paula, and on the Amistad committee, was also one of our
she's my dear sorority sister too.
Oh, really? Nice. She'll be there on Friday. All the key players were involved. Charles Warner Jr. Wrote an amazing panel on the story of the Temple Street Congregational Church, centering the story of the church's involvement in the Amistad story, not just Simeon Jocelyn, but the whole church. And so Mike Morand gave us permission to also use the portraits of the Amistad rebels so that we could have a first section that's really focused on the people who led this revolt. As you know, the film kind of narrowly focused more on the trials and the lawyers, and lost sight of the very people who led this revolt, and risked their lives to liberate themselves.
Yes.
And I think to add to that, and I think part of it is that how we come together is like puzzle pieces, really, because you have this incredible museum right here in New Haven, and then you have a 129-foot schooner that's not a museum, but it really is a floating classroom, and it's created a platform for us to have courageous conversations about race and social justice, and about the legacy of the 53 Men Day and our communities and that kind of thing. So we have this really nice collaboration between looking at inclusive history in a museum setting, and then coming to a ship and having a hands-on interactive experience that helps us to reflect on ourselves, as I said before. So it really is, for us, it's sometimes when we talk about the ship, we don't consider ourselves to be a ship with a story. It's not about the ship. I mean, it's a fabulous ship. You've seen the ship. It's a wonderful ship, right? But it really is a story with the ship, right? It really is the story that the ship becomes a carrot that brings people in so that we can have these really important conversations. And so I think it's, us kind of coming together, and Yale as well, and all of the partners, that we see ourselves fitting together. I think that, they're for many years, I think we've functioned kind of in silos. And now this year we're coming together in a way that I feel is phenomenal. And we're just really looking forward to this weekend.
So you've got a lot of things built out. It kicks off Friday. The film is the kickoff, I imagine.
Yep. And a springboard, for kind of approaching the Amistad story that we think we know in new ways.
And then the schooner sits in the harbor.
Yes.
Because the film is going to be shown at the boathouse.
Correct.
Is it going to be outside? Outside.
Yes.
Outside.
Weather's looking good.
Yes.
I know. I hear the weather is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, and so far we have about 100 people that have signed up, and they'll bring their chairs and families, and yes, it's going to be great.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so where does the schooner, Paula? Where does the schooner go when it's not in New Haven? Like, what happens to it?
Oh my gosh, it goes all over the place. I tell you, it's and one of the things that it's been amazing to me. I've been executive director for 3 years, and the response to the schooner pulling up to a port in every community becomes a really big deal. And what's fabulous to me is that, these ports, they align with the story. Like, we leave New Haven, we're going to New York, we're actually going to Harlem. And so the history, in Harlem, the schooner coming to that area, there's so many freedom fighters and civil rights leaders that they just can't wait to have that connection. And then we're going to Montauk Point in New York. And, what we know is that that was actually the first stop of the Amistad ship before it came to Connecticut. It stopped in Montauk.
Now that I did not know that.
Where slavery was already illegal, but legal here in Connecticut. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And so the community of Montauk, they just can't wait, for this moment. The ship is actually going to dock at the same exact point where it docked in 1839. We're going to go to Kingston, New York, Yonkers, New York. And before we came into New Haven, we were at Mystic and Stamford and just throughout up and down the Long Island Sound.
I like it.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about working with Discovering Amistad, is they tie together the whole regional story. And I should have added, here at New Haven Museum, we also had educators on our staff who are in the New Haven public schools also involved in the recreating of this exhibit. So Rohana De Los Santos, Eve Galanis, who with her students made this interactive map that takes you through kind of the local places in New Haven that are significant to the Amistad story. So it's nice to go hyper local, but then connect with Discovering Amistad to connect to this much broader, important story that happened, across the country and globally.
So Joanna, you all have the famous picture up, but beyond this weekend, will you still have an exhibition up about the Amistad reimagined, or
yes,
how long does that
yeah,
run?
Amistad Retold is an ongoing exhibit. We're here always, but it's really exciting to partner with Discovering Amistad while they're docked in New Haven to really make a moment of it and bring the community together across all these places. There's nothing more exhilarating than being right there on the waterfront. Students always know it by the trucks, but to be able to really do something over there to really engage with the history where it happened on the Long Island Sound, that's memorable.
And the Long Island Sound, I mean, we know the story of Mr. Latson and his digging out the sound to make it possible for ships to come in. I mean, by his sheer will of creating that, Long Wharf would not exist had he not taken that on. So It's amazing how all these pieces are so connected to make up New Haven's Black history and Black history culture in places where we didn't think we were as people, in Worcester Square, on Long Wharf,
right?
And on the Green, right? So
yes, absolutely, yeah. And we just the ship just left a few weeks ago. We were in New London, and so our students were able to go to the Customs House, and the ship was there as well. And so it's just as Joanna said, it's just these connections. I think it helps all of us working collaboratively to focus on the story in a very different way and make it relevant.
So Joanna, is this the responsibility of the New Haven Museum to hold these New Haven stories, to be the keepers of this New Haven story? Because this is a very New Haven story that has international reach. But at the end of the day, it's a very New Haven story. Do you feel some kind of responsibility to own it, to keep it, to nurture it, to grow it?
I just, what was interesting is when we kind of deconstructed the exhibit and worked with the pieces and led primary source workshops for students, they were pointing out, where those omissions were and asking the best questions. So having the opportunity to kind of remake something, with students that's responsive to their line of inquiry, what they're asking about, what teachers are interested in, and to kind of bring attention to that process of retelling a story. We always ask at the beginning of a program, why do we retell stories? And students always have the best responses. They said what you said, Paula, about having more inclusive voices, or the perspective had been limited, or we make new discoveries, or we retell them so that we don't forget them and we can keep the story alive. So, it really... it's great to kind of think about and bringing everyone into that process of retelling, reimagining it, making new meaning of it, and to do it collaboratively in the ways that Paula mentioned. Is just that's really at the core of the process and how we want to really do history here at the New Haven Museum. Should also mention that the other sponsors, Amistad committees, very involved, the Office of New Haven Affairs, and Daisha made a great connection with Black and Brown Soul Cyclists, who I think will be leading a ride, right to the film.
Isn't that Mike Twitty and company? Mike Twitty and company.
Yeah, so we see it as kind of a new, a takeover of all the different places in New Haven, kind of coming together to really make new meaning.
And a bike ride is a great way to sort of see places of the city that you can't really get to with a car. I mean, you could get just about anywhere with a car, but a bicycle can bring you up close and personal to sites.
So true.
Yeah,
I think.
And and what I wanted to mention also, as we talk about the exposure of this kind of retold story, is that we've been doing a lot of work with teachers We have a curriculum, the AEES Amistad Equity Education Series. So we're working with the teachers that are teaching the African American Latinx courses in Connecticut. And it's so interesting, as Joanna mentioned, when working with students, the question is, how do we retell the story? When working with teachers, it's very similar because many of them have never learned the story, or they've never had any African American history at all in their entire education.
Wow.
And so for many folks, yeah, it's incredible. This is the first time that they've had the exposure, and they have some hesitation in terms of talking about race and social justice. And so our work with teachers has been to really try to get into these discussions in a way that they can be comfortable, but at the same time be factual and not to omit or not to be inclusive, because we're doing what we're doing with students. If the teachers aren't continuing it, or the teachers don't have the tools in order to teach the story in a way that's inclusive, it will just impact our whole system. So, that's also a part of this collaboration, working directly with the educators.
So Paula, how often do you get to, or how many times have you interacted, or the schooner has interacted with the folks in West Africa? How do they plan? How do they commemorate the Amistad story? And do they let you know when they want to do some celebratory thing?
Well, you know what, we've had a lot of connection with people from Sierra Leone, as well as West Africa in general. Like every time the schooner is in a port, we get a group of individuals that come. This is our history, and they talk about it. They talk about exposure, and some, as a matter of fact, when for Juneteenth we were in Mystic Seaport Museum, and I met a young Sierra Leone brother and his daughter. And one of the things I said to him, I asked him, tell me about your connection with the story, and how often do you go to Sierra Leone? He said he just came back from Sierra Leone. And I said to him, I would have asked you to bring me some of the currency, because I know Sing Big Pierre is on the currency. And he informed me, he said, just recently, they modified the currency in Sierra Leone. And I didn't know that, because when we're teaching our classes, we always show that that dollar bill currency with Sing Pierre's picture on it, so that we're constantly getting updates, and constantly getting folks from West Africa that come to the ship. The artists that Joanna mentioned from the Nia Arts, they're a group of West African individuals that they bring their instruments and their songs and their culture to, they will bring it to the museum, and they're just phenomenal. So we have these connections, but every time we come to a port, we learn something different. We get more information.
I love it. So Joanna, is this the idea to make this Amistad weekend annual thing? Or is this just like we're just celebrating this year? And
no, that's the hope. This is,
okay.
I mean, laying the groundwork for something that could be done again and again with, new performances, new films. We can remake it every time. And just to add to what you said, Tom Thurston also, who works with both of us, was instrumental in bringing together teachers in Connecticut and Sierra Leone. When we opened our exhibit, he was live streaming it to reach people he knows, teachers he worked with in Sierra Leone too. So as you mentioned, it's a global story, and maybe there's ways to keep building on it to have broader reach too.
Oh, well, I think if you two are in charge, there'll be all kinds of ways to build upon this story. I mean, I love that you're marrying a very it's family centered. You're starting with the film, and everybody loves a good film. It's going to be outdoors. People can actually get on the schooner. It's going to be interactive. Everybody's going to play some music. So I just find that to be a very wonderful, rich way to tell a story that everybody can embrace. Do you know what I mean? Like, I find that no matter how young you are, how old you are, this is your New Haven story too. Like, it's everybody's story, and it's worth celebrating. So before I let you all go, Talk a little bit more, talk a little bit more about the weekend and things that you really want people to sort of key in on.
I guess I'll start. I think for us, it's we want people to come out. We want people to come out with their families and enjoy, to share, to connect. You know, one of the things that has been very moving to me at Discovering Amistad is that when you get groups of people to come around and you're looking at something like this, they talk to each other. You know, people from all backgrounds, they talk to each other, get into conversations. So we, you know, for me, it's just come out and enjoy the movie, the ship, the music, you know, all of it. And then also the other thing I want to say is that, you know, the the topic and the content is not easy. You know, it's not like we're watching a Disney movie, right? We're watching something that at sometimes it's emotional and it's real, you know, for people, and we want to acknowledge that. But we also want to create opportunities to kind of debrief and connect with folks. I think one of the things that we never want to do is to shy away from history, because you know there's some groups that want to pretend like you know history didn't happen. We don't want to shy away from the truth in our history. We want to learn from it, and we want to create space for people to talk to each other. So we just want to acknowledge that it's not, you know, some of this is difficult. I remember when I was first hired at Discovering Amistad, it was difficult for me to get on the ship. I got to the ship and there was the board of directors on the ship, and I couldn't step up on the ship. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna lose my job on the first day because I just can't do it.
I understand that, because
understand that?
I think Paula had that same experience too.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Kai Perry was like, no,
Yeah.
get on the ship. This is
On the ship.
yes, it's holy. Come, get on the ship.
That's right. There's like generational weight sometimes for some folks. But the reality is that this is a story about resilience. It's about freedom. It's about working together. It's about the lessons that will enhance our lives. And when you focus on it in that way, it feels really different.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you know, that theme of a retelling of a story, when we rewatch the film and try to kind of examine it as a piece of history, but also what else can be learned through the new discoveries that have been made by historians or the artists who have been retelling the story for generations, that you'll see when you come to the exhibit here. As I mentioned, Hale Woodruff's mural studies of 1939 are really leave an impression. Jacob Lawrence represents the revolt in a completely different way. So the story has been reimagined in a lot of different ways. And I hope when people come to the New Haven Museum, they'll really kind of take in the arts and really think about what aspects of the story are being emphasized and what years. And also, as Paula mentioned, you know, the revolt was such an important moment and catalyst, but the collective actions of the people who led that revolt are there the whole way through despite their incarceration in New Haven. And that story of repatriation is so important at the end. So really tracing those collective actions the whole way through, I think is something we hope, you know, people take away.
Well, if you are listening this morning, and quite a few people are, it kicks off Friday, July 19th with the screening of the film Amistad, and it's going to be at the Canal Boathouse at 7:30 p.m. And the schooner, the La Amistad schooner will be in the backdrop, so you can see the film and then gaze over and see the schooner. There's a whole bunch of activities back and forth between the New Haven Museum and other places, the Canal Boathouse. So there'll be opportunities for people to sort of be in two places. And if you're hungry, there's a whole food truck situation over there. So don't feel like you can't get something to eat, because you can just walk down the drive and get your fill of food trucks. So
that's right. For the whole movie. You can run for the whole movie.
so you can bring it all, you can bring it full circle, and you can bring it to the movie. So how about that? So I tell you what, Joanne and then Paula, this makes me excited to see what future scholars and future teachers and future folks will do with this story, and learn about this story and retell this story into future ahead, long before and after I'm here. So this is exciting. Thank you all for coming on this morning and spending this time. I
Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So, and say hi to everybody at the New Haven Museum.
Will do.
Good folks over there. And Paula, I don't think I've ever met you, so I'm so
No.
delighted you are manning the ship, so to speak, over
Yes.
at Discovery Amistad.
I look forward to your visit. I'll be looking for you.
All right, look for me, girl. I got purple hair. You can't miss me. Can't miss me. I will see some of y'all over the weekend.
Okay, good.
Sounds
All
great.
right.
So
Thanks
much.
very
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Harry Grove. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Y'all be cool out there now. Don't catch no cases.
We'll keep driving.